gummy bear.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to Game S Mornings with me, Jeff Grubb, your host from giantbomb.com. Thank you for tuning in. In this episode, we're going to be talking about Randy Pitchford just jumping on a rake and how an old game was the best-selling release last month. It's going to be a good one because we have Jon Martin on the show. Jon, how are you doing?
Jeff Grubb, I'm doing fantastic. How are you doing this morning?
Doing great. I'm glad we could get you on the show. We met at PAX. It was a good conversation. You witnessed me being dealt with by enforcers, as was my due, of course. But why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself to everybody? Let everyone know like what you're up to, where they can find you on the internet, and all that stuff.
Sure. Yeah. So, hi, everyone. I'm Jon. I have been making videos in my spare time for over a decade. Basically built a career path to work in video games, work in video game marketing. I've done that for a few years. Now I'm by myself, but still have that passion for video games. And yeah, I'm excited to get it to the news.
Yeah, we're gonna hop in here real soon. But yeah, how was your PAX? Did you enjoy it? Is that like, are you out on the East Coast? Was it easy to get to and everything for you?
Yeah, so I'm in the Boston area, so I've been going to PAX
Perfect.
every year since 2012. Yeah, it was a good one. Definitely a different vibe this year. You can kind of tell that there was a lot of vacant space, and there weren't as many big titles in recent years, which is, understandable for the state of everything. But no, I had a really good time. It's always fun to meet up with people you talk to online. It's always great to meet up with people you look up to, like you guys. And
Thank you.
yeah, it's just a awesome opportunity to talk to developers and learn about what's going on.
Yeah. Did you spend any time in the press room, the media room? Because that's like they have like a room there where media and journalists can work. And I used to spend a lot of time in there, and I haven't been in there in years. So it's just like, what's it like in there these days? But I don't know. Did you go in there at all?
I unfortunately didn't. I spent most of my time in the PAX arcade.
No, that's a way better use of your time. Definitely do that. I'm at a point with PAX where I don't know what I'm expecting from it in terms of video games. I think I got there and I was like, Nintendo's not showing off Switch 2 here, really. It's there's not much going on. That's fine. PAX is going to be able to do just like all right without that stuff because so many people come there just to hang out with friends or do the events or play tabletop games, a huge tabletop section like always. It's bigger than ever. But then I did see Elden Ring Night Rain. They were like running demos for that or whatever. Maybe it was a theater thing. I didn't go in there, but I just saw their little conclave they had over there. I'm like, oh yeah, I guess big games can just show up at PAX. Now you're right. In the past, there's been many more of those and bigger ones, and they had booths that were even bigger than this Night Rain one, which was kind of small, all things considered. But I at this point, I'm a little surprised when big games show up at PAX because it's just it feels like one of these things where a lot of developers, especially internationally, are just like, oh, I don't know if we can make use of this, or we're kind of afraid of spending money traveling around the world showing off the games. So, yeah, I don't know. PAX doesn't necessarily need those games anymore, right? Because it's just this community thing at this point.
Yeah, I think a big push this year was featuring more local game developers from the Boston area, which is
Yeah,
always
that's
great to
cool.
get like meet up with those people, see where they're based out of. There's a fair amount of big studios in the Boston area, and there's more and more even coming still. So it would be cool to see more of like a Harmonix or whatever the creator of BioShock is doing. But like, yeah, I think like with the death of the indie mega booth, like
Yeah.
there is a kind of stunted growth in terms of like discoverability, but there is still plenty of great games, plenty of lines to stand in. Yeah, and there's some big games. Like I played Crimson Desert, which is that like Black Desert MMO kind of game, single player
Yeah.
game, which was really cool, and that was a whole experience. But
Excellent. Well, let's explain ourselves and what we do here. We're Giant Bomb. You can go to giantbomb.com/join and help support this crew over here doing what we do. If you like this show, we'd really appreciate that. You can join up there, and all of that money does go to support us as an independent company now. That's a recent development, and we're really excited about it. We're getting all of the balls rolling on that. If you do that, you get ad-free shows, some other goodies that we will be providing to you, but also you just get the warm fuzzies in your heart knowing you're going to make something like GB at night at SGF possible, which we're doing our best to make happen right now. As far as this show goes, most weekdays, Jeff Grubb, will help piece your gaming life back together. That includes breaking news and maybe even some of our own original reporting. For all these topics, I'll get the input of a bona fide expert who will make me look smart. If you are watching live on Twitch, welcome. You can always listen to the show later on podcast feeds by searching for Game Mess Mornings or find the RSS feed on giantbomb.com. You can also catch the show later and live on YouTube. Hello, YouTube. All right, we have a lot to get into, so let's start the show with Randy Pitchford moves to justify comments that real fans would find a way, and that's a quote, to buy Borderlands 4 even if it costs $80. This is from Chris Scullion at VGC. Gearbox Entertainment CEO Randy Pitchford has attempted to explain recent comments that, quote, true fans would, quote, find a way to buy Borderlands 4 if it ends up costing $80. Earlier this month, Pitchford was asked by a follower on Twitter not to make the game $80, to which he replied that it was not his call. He then added, but if you're a real fan, you'll find a way to make it happen. My local game had Starflight for Sega Genesis for $80 in 1991 when I was just out of high school working minimum wage at an ice cream parlor in Pismo Beach. And I found a way to make it happen while walking both ways uphill in the snow with guns pointed at me, apparently. Pitchford's comments were relatively unnoticed at the time, but have become more widespread this week, with some players criticizing the suggestion that players who can't afford the game aren't, quote, true fans. In a new post on Twitter, Pitchford has linked to a video from a recent Borderlands 4 Q&A saying, if you want the truth, here it is. And then basically in that video, John, he says he doesn't know what the price is going to be. It still hasn't been decided, which at this point in time, I believe a little bit that they are like trying to see what they can get away with. But that to me, that means it could be $80. All of this makes it sound very possible that it could be $80. I guess let's start before we get into Randy here. Do you think Borderlands 4 could be worth not like that, John? Do you think Borderlands 4 can be worth $80 to you?
To me, it's kind of a hard sell because Borderlands has always been a franchise that I associate with that multiplayer aspect. Getting an $80 price tag is going to be a little bit more prohibitively expensive. Like during the pandemic, I had no intention of playing Borderlands 3. Like I'd kind of gotten my fill after the first and second, but that was a game that was already on the cheap. It was the middle of like 2021. My friends needed something to do, and so I just picked up 4 copies. I can't see that situation really happening again this time around. Yeah, I don't know. What do you think about it?
Yeah, I mean, I think you nailed it where it's like, this is the kind of game where it's not really just the price of the game. It's also either, like you said, gifting it to your friends or talking your friends into buying it as well. And like we've already built up all those arguments to try to convince them to spend $60 on a game. And now more recently, maybe $70 here or there. This game comes out at $80. It's like, that's not even a fight worth having. Like, I'm just not going to try to convince my friends to spend $80 on this game, especially like knowing that I'm probably going to get it free through work or something like that. It just makes me feel bad. So, yeah, there's more to it than just, quote, true fans. And then, Randy saying that, obviously he should have just not said anything, right? Like that was the right move here. He should have just shut the fuck up, Friday.
I honestly don't know if it's in his DNA at this point. I feel like he is just a magic act and he's just revealing more and more layers of kind of someone out of touch, kind of someone who just doesn't really know the state of the industry right now. But yeah, it's definitely a situation and a time where it is so up in the air. Like Mario Kart 8 is so far the only $80 game that we know about.
Yeah, right. That still is the only one. Yeah.
Yeah. And like, I can't think of a world where Borderlands 4 is a game I'm going to go back to in the future. Mario Kart 8, $80 is a lot. I'm getting it $50 with the Switch 2 bundle, but it is kind of that forever game. Like Mario Kart 8, Wii U included, like has survived for a decade, and people are still having a great time with that. But like in the long term, I can just easily seeing people drop off halfway through the campaign and never come back to it. Like I don't really see a future in where that's, viable.
Yeah. I mean, it's, It really does just feel like these two worlds getting further apart where, obviously this has come up a bunch of times, but Clair Obscur was $50.
Yeah.
It's the best rated reviewed game of the year. I just raised my standing desk. I started lifting that up. That's crazy. Get my hand away from the button. Yeah, it like there are games out there that do come out at a price that feels budget now, and they are some of the best games. Just period. No caveats. They're just some of the best games. And these bigger companies are in this situation where they're like, well, we've separated ourselves by making games bigger and more expensive. And look, we like that's the way that we get your attention. So we're going to justify getting your attention by charging you $80 for it. And I just don't think they realize how they seem to be driving at a wall here. That like it's going to reach a point where people cannot, like you said, justify it anymore. And a big part of that is Randy being out of touch. Like his story here is crazy. Like, yeah, you got Starflight for Sega Genesis for $80 in the 90s while working minimum wage. Well, I mean, minimum wage back then relative to what it is now, a little bit different. Also, the cost of living for everything else was way lower than it is now. People's rents were not 50% of their income, things like that. The like going to fast food was not a $35 endeavor for like 2 to 3 people. It was $7 or something like that. So the idea of an expensive cartridge to produce having to cost more so they could justify selling it at all made way more sense. It's just not a fair comparison. It's completely out of touch. So he needs to just shut the fuck up and not go out there and say this stuff. And again, we don't know if this game's going to be $80, and maybe this is the kind of thing that causes them to be like, man, let's just back off. Let's go 70, whatever. Because like 70 still feels like them getting away with something. It hasn't been that long. So do you think that it's going to be contentious like this going forward as these other developers and publishers try to sneak up to 80? I think Microsoft might have done it the quote unquote right way by just being, hey, later this year, some shit's going to be 80. And then like they rip off the Band-Aid and then they could just stand back, let people get mad now. And when those games come, most people go, we knew they were going to do this. In this situation, it's like, it feels like kind of even though it's very similar, hey, this thing could be 80. It just feels a lot worse because it's like, well, just tell us if it's going to be that price or not, so we can just get the conversation out of the way. Is it going to be like a lot of rakes for a lot of these companies going forward as they try to raise the prices?
Yeah, and I think like the Xbox situation is very interesting because they kind of tacked that on to everything across the board having a price increase. So it was in a way kind of blanketed the muted effect of that. Yeah, I mean, the sooner we get to Switch 2 and we start seeing what other $80 games are, and when PlayStation probably inevitably raises the price as well, I think everything's going to be looked over with like a magnifying glass, really analyzing this. People have so many options right now to get $80 worth of content, or even more than that, just by doing a Steam sale or even like Epic Game Store. They give you so much game for free,
Yeah.
and not even taking into account the free to play live service games that you can like play with your friends. You can just have a great time for very little uptake. And I mean, and that's not even taking into account, like, we don't even know how Borderlands 4 is going to be optimized. It could be an absolute dumpster fire, kind of like how Monster Hunter Wilds was. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's going to be a very, very tough sell for a lot of these companies if you do not have one of those huge franchises that people just can't live without.
I know a big part of this is just at these companies, they have insight into how we spend money. And they look over at games that have a lot of microtransactions. 2K, for sure, knows how people spend money on like NBA 2K. And they're looking at like, okay, people are spending $25 for one skin. If they're willing to do that, of course they're going to be willing to spend $80 on a game. And it's just like, oh, no, we don't connect those things at all. Like, first of all, I don't spend $25 on a skin. That's a different kind of person than I am. And probably a different kind of person than probably shows up for the bulk of Borderlands sales. Maybe not entirely. Maybe there is quite a bit of overlap there. But even so, the people who are overlapping view those prices as two completely different things. The anchor for the price of a video game is them spending their entire lives spending $50, then $60, and now $70 on it. And then like getting used to like that one price for a very long time. It was $50 for forever, $60 for forever, and now $70 for a couple of years. People
Yeah,
are
not
the
that long.
people are making that comparison. They're not thinking like, oh, I easily spend $250 on microtransactions in Fortnite in a year, and that's one video game. So $80 for another video game, that's nothing. And no one is making that connection. But I bet internally they see it that way, and it's like you guys are telling yourselves a story that doesn't really work. Also, saw in chat my editorializing of what Randy said. He just ended at saying he worked minimum wage at an ice cream parlor at Pismo Beach, and he found a way to make it happen. He didn't actually say the stuff about walking uphill both ways in the snow and getting shot at. So I should clarify if that confused anybody. All right, let's get on to this next story. April 2025 U.S. video game market highlights from Circana. This is from Matt Piscatella over at Circana. April 2025 total market projected U.S. consumer spending across video game hardware content and accessories fell 3% when compared to a year ago to $4.1 billion. Overall, year-to-date spending in the United States, that's what Circana tracks, is down 8%, which is pretty big. That's like, I think last year Matt was predicting somewhere around that mark for the entirety of 2024. It ended up doing much better than that. It feels like some of that like slack is being let go this year, and at least through May, or excuse me, at least through April, we're 8% behind where we were in 2024, and it doesn't look like there's a lot of games that could fix that. Although, of course, Switch 2 could change that story here very quickly. Best-selling games of the month include The Elder Scrolls 4 Oblivion Remastered at number 1. Forza Horizon 5, which launched on PlayStation 5, went up to number 2 after being 42 the month before. MLB The Show at 3, Minecraft at 4, the movie, right? That's the movie.
Effect.
Okay, yeah. And the Assassin's Creed Shadows at 5, Indiana Jones and the Great Circle, which launched on PS5 as well, went up to number 6. Call of Duty Black Ops 6 at 7, then WWE, NBA, and PGA Tour rounding out the top 10. Let's see if there's anything else interesting on this list worth calling out. No, but you know what's missing on the list is Clair Obscur Expedition 33, which is because Kepler does not report their digital sales to Circana. And I think I'm pretty sure, John, the game's sold out, right? The physical version, like people have been trying to get the physical version of Clair Obscur, and it's been sold out like since launch, basically. So I bet they didn't print a ton of copies of that. They weren't sure if the game was really going to pop off the way it did, and when it did, it was mostly digital, it seems like, especially obviously on PC. So I think that's the reason this game is not on the list. The physical versions would have been tracked, digital versions wouldn't have been, and it seems like the vast majority of people bought that game digitally because that's the only way they could find it. So that's why it's not on the list. Don't everyone freak out. I'm sure that game probably would have been number 2 on this list. Is that would that be your guess? Because even beating Forza Horizon 5, it seems like it had that many players.
Yeah, I mean, it was just a record-breaking amount of sales just in those first couple weeks alone. It's a fantastic game. I honestly think word of mouth, and as we get closer and closer to award season, people keep hearing this name, potentially like another Switch 2 edition. I'm assuming that'll happen. I think they made comments that kind of like heavily suggest that it's coming to. But yeah, like, I mean, more and more people are getting the chance to play it. It's at Game Pass. I know 2 weekends ago, I had a friend who was trying to find it. Diehard physical collector. I'm not super heavy on physical on Xbox or PlayStation, but I mean, it was just impossible to find that game. So
Yep.
I think in the coming weeks, in the coming months, just the groundswell from that game is going to prop it up. And regardless of how it does, I think it definitely exceeded the expectations of their first game. Like, they did a fantastic job, and it shows.
I mean, if I'm Kepler, the publisher, and if I'm Sandfall, is that the name of the studio?
So.
If I'm them, like, yeah, do a new run of the physical games for sure, but get to work immediately on a big collector's edition. Like, just do what Baldur's Gate 3 did, which didn't really have a physical version up front, but like a year later, they put all the updates into one package, and then they put it into an awesome physical collector's edition. I think that would be pretty cool. I think people would jump all over that because they have fallen in love with this game. I've been singing Clair Obscur, baby, Clair Obscur, Clair Obscur, like just to myself nonstop for the last week, and I haven't played it in a week, so it's infectious. Let's see here. Matt always does a good rundown of the things to know for many of the big games on the list. Let's go through that. The Elder Scrolls 4 Oblivion Remastered was the best-selling game of the month, instantly becoming the 3rd best-selling game of 2025 year to date. It was the best-selling title across each of PlayStation, Xbox, and PC platforms. that year to date so far. Monster Hunter Wild still number 1. Assassin's Creed Shadows still number 2. Shadows apparently just did what it needed to do in terms of that game, not what it needed to do to save Ubisoft, but it did very well. The Elder Scrolls 4 Oblivion Remastered sold more units in April 2025 than the Elder Scrolls 4 Oblivion achieved across its first 15 months in market combined following its March 2006 debut, and generated more full game dollar sales than the original's first 14 months combined. That's kind of nuts. That's like, I guess that just shows like
Absurd.
gaming's just blown up, right? Gaming's so much bigger than it was in 2006. That's one of the biggest explanations for this. Is that correct, do you think?
I think so. I think it's like this awesome point where people have been playing Elder Scrolls like for quite a while. People have held up Oblivion as the pinnacle of the series. I think it's that and Morrowind. But I mean, as soon as Skyrim came out and as soon as ESO came out and, kind of like reworked itself into becoming a success, I think that franchise has only had like mythic tales about what Oblivion could be. And I think that remastered really did capture a lot of the imagination that was there. Maybe like
Yep.
there's a little bit of like your brain is thinking this is what the game was all those years ago. And we're at a great point for that. I think 360, Wii, and PS3 nostalgia is kind of just starting.
It's going to hit hard. Yeah.
Yeah.
I like the GameCube was the big winner of the nostalgia for the previous generation before that, or for the 2 generations before that. Obviously, I think PS2 just kind of defaulted in the generation there. But for that PS3, Xbox 360, and Wii, I do think that like a lot of love is going to be thrown on the Xbox 360 there. It seems like that's going to have a real strong chance of kind of having the shine when people are looking back and feeling warm fuzzies about that era. It's like a lot of it's going to be like, yeah, playing on the 360 was cool, and no one will remember the red ring and things like that. Forza Horizon 5 was the second best-selling game of April following its debut on PlayStation 5. Indiana Jones, we talked about that. 4 of the top 5 and 5 of the top-selling best-selling games of the month on PlayStation platforms were published by Microsoft. I did notice this. I actually put the image here. So that's Elder Scrolls 4 at number 1, Forza Horizon 5 at number 2, Indiana Jones and the Great Circle at number 4, Call of Duty Black Ops 6 at number 5, and Minecraft at number 7. And then, and then the rest of the games are like Take-Two, Ubisoft, EA, and then Sony has MLB The Show at number 3. So, I mean, I don't know what this says anymore, John. To me, it just says, obviously, the thing we know, console war over. The future of publishing on all platforms feels like the obvious thing for not just Microsoft, but for everybody. And like Sony putting their games on Xbox, maybe that doesn't make as much sense. The audience is smaller. But, if the audience was bigger, it feels like it would be obvious to put it on there. I don't know. We're just so far past all of the old ways of thinking about things that clearly this is the future. I don't know what else it says. Do you have any thoughts on this, John?
Yeah, I mean, and you released a really good overview of Xbox's strategy, Microsoft's strategy that has been kind of building up over the years, especially since we had those big Bethesda and Activision Blizzard acquisitions. It's paying off. They're definitely more focused on the service aspect and just providing games wherever they can, get their hands and get those discs in the door. For PlayStation, it's kind of interesting because yeah, I don't know if like having a Helldivers would have really affected their, the takeover of Helldivers 2. Like I think that game was the perfect success that a lot of PlayStation fans wanted it to be. And I don't know if bringing that to Xbox would have made a lot of sense. I don't know how much it costs to port a game to a completely different platform, something that is like completely different than just porting it to Steam, where there's a lot of resources for that.
I think Helldivers 2 could still end up on Xbox. That's the one that feels like it has just because, and I think they would justify it as have someone else publish it, like they've had happen with some of their other games, some of the smaller like PSP and Vita games that have been like made their way over to the Switch recently. Those have been published externally, even though they're still PlayStation games. And it seems like a big part of that is that's just the cheapest way of doing it. But for I could see the same thing happening with Helldivers, especially since that studio's announced like we're doing things on our own going forward. We're not going to go back and do the Sony thing again. And I think Sony could be like, well, let's let you kind of like start that off with Helldivers, and that could also be their first step of like putting something on Xbox. I think it would be a really good fit. Maybe it doesn't make as much sense because Helldivers 2 does feel like it was coming to a natural sort of fading away, a conclusion. Although I didn't include it in the headlines here, John, but apparently people are rushing back to that game because of the most recent update. Apparently, it's hitting very hard. So,
Oh, very
who knows?
cool.
Yeah, I'm happy to hear that.
Yeah.
All right, so let's see here. Other things from Matt Piscatella. Call of Duty HQ led all titles in total U.S. monthly active users across both PlayStation and Xbox. And then 2 titles saw strong gains on PlayStation following their addition to PlayStation Plus. That's RoboCop Rogue City, which jumped from
Nice.
111th in PlayStation total monthly active users in March, all the way up to 8th. And that might, oh man, only 8th. No. Getting into that top 10 of most players on one of these consoles is really hard. I think Oblivion, which sold really well on the PlayStation, did not get into the top 10 of most players on PlayStation. It did get there on Xbox, but Game Pass helped that out. So it's like with the help of Game Pass, it got up to like number 5 or 4 or something like that. Cracking the top 10 is very difficult because some of these perennial games just have so many players all throughout the month that so RoboCop breaking in there, that's a really cool thing. Let's see what else happened there. Texas Chainsaw Massacre jumped to number 10 in April from 375. So apparently getting into that PlayStation Plus situation is a big boon to getting players to your game. So I'm glad that's working over there. Let's wrap up this story with the hardware numbers. Hardware spending fell by 8% when compared to a year ago. Notable that that's $186 million, which is the lowest total spending on hardware in the United States since July of 2020, which would have been right before the next-gen consoles at that time, the current-gen consoles now, and right as the shock of COVID was really hitting, where people were not spending money. We eventually got to that point, John, right, where people were like, video games, that's the answer. We're all stuck inside. Let's all play video games. That was not July 2020. It took some time for that to really sink in, that this was going to be really long-term and we should find some entertainment. So, I mean, that's just PlayStation 5 and Xbox, probably not exciting people in all too many ways, at least not new people to come in and buy the console, and then everyone else waiting for Switch 2, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think PS5 and Xbox Series, they're kind of in I guess Xbox less so, but that's kind of Microsoft's platform as a whole, just like putting their games everywhere. We're in this tough position where I feel like the PlayStation 5 exclusive games have kind of dried up. So there really isn't like a magnet game to bring people there. Like obviously, I mean, during the height of the pandemic, there wasn't like any of those launch titles, they weren't out yet. But yeah, we don't have like that many games in this year besides Ghost of Tsushima. And if Soros, like the next Housemarque game, does come out this or next year. But yeah, I mean, the demand for consoles is definitely down. Switch 2 is probably going to be a humongous exception. But yeah, in terms of games, it is kind of looking a little dry because I think people are still getting out of the mindset of like, oh, we can launch this year. GTA 6 is here, and we don't need to delay our games, I guess. What do you
Yeah.
think about that?
Yeah, I think the talk around what these companies have publicly has been so muted because of Grand Theft Auto. I think that's exactly right. And now that that's in 2026, does that change, or is it too late? Have the
Yeah,
trains already left the station on like, well, we should just launch in 2026? I would assume not, because a lot of people had to know that this was possible. In fact, I'm guessing a lot of these companies had pretty good insight on a delay being possible, just because they're, corporate espionage, which is really just having friends of friends who work at Rockstar talk to each other and be like, just tell me what's going on so we know what to do with our game. Um,
networking.
right, networking, that's what it's called. So I imagine that we're probably going to get here into the Summer Game Fest season. And while I don't think there's going to be a lot of like really hot bangers on that show floor, just because that will be hard to like get up and running in a matter of weeks now that you know what's happening with Grand Theft Auto, the announcements could actually find a way into that show and the surrounding orbit of Summer Game Fest to fill out the rest of this year. And then, does that change the story on people buying consoles? I don't know, because those prices are going up.
Yeah,
On the PlayStation, they already went up on the Xbox. They're going up on the PlayStation. I think people that's going to scare off anyone who might have been like, oh, finally, some of these other games are getting announced. Cool. Well, now it's more expensive, and I was waiting to like for a bunch of games that were going to be cheap to justify it because I'm price sensitive. This just boxes me out again. Yeah,
yeah.
maybe Grand Theft Auto 6 like is the thing that like breaks through that dam, but for now, I don't know. Uh, all right, let's take a quick break. When we come back, we'll talk about plenty of more headlines. If you want the ad-free version, go to giantbomb.com/join, which I think you might hear an ad about right now. This episode of Giant Bomb is brought to you by giantbomb.com/join. Join us there, become a member. It helps us make fun stuff. It gets you ad-free content. It also helps us make some extras here and there that we'll give exclusively to you as members. It's giantbomb.com/join for $10 a month or $100 a year, where you save $20. You can support us in making all the cool stuff that we make over here at Giant Bomb. Once again, that's giantbomb.com/join. Become a member now. Welcome back to Game Mess Mornings. I'm Jeff Grubb. That's Jon Martin. We're talking about video games, including Senua's Saga, Hellblade 2 coming to PS5 this summer. The story of, an Xbox game going to PlayStation, that's not a story anymore. But do you think that, it's just obvious at this point. Do you think Hellblade 2 can find an audience on PlayStation 5, though? Because I don't know. It just seems like it missed with its original launch.
Did the first not sell well, or was it more of a critical hit?
I think that's right. Maybe it's not 100% correct. I'm sure a lot of people just tried it in Game Pass, and I definitely got the sense that people, if they did play it, they moved on it from it pretty quickly. I guess that's what I was getting at, is that it feels like the response to that was subtle at best. Even though there's some people who were raving about the visuals. Do you think it could find a different audience on PlayStation 5, like a lot of these other games from Microsoft have?
Yeah, I think it's a very interesting situation where it will appeal to more of the hardcore gaming audience, like people who really are valuing this game based on just the artistic value of it. I think it tackles a lot of very interesting themes. In terms of mass appeal, I don't know if this is the kind of Ninja Theory game that a lot of people would be looking for. I think of like Devil May Cry, DMC Devil May Cry, and I think of what was the game? Journey to the West, the Journey to the West one on 360, Enslaved, or what was that?
Enslaved Journey to the West. Is that yeah?
Yeah. Yeah, someone could correct us. But it's very interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it'll find some audience. I don't think it's going to make a huge impact at all. Those games are going to hit like the right audience, people who have been waiting for Hellblade, because that was the last game that they made, but also the last one that was still multi-platform. So there's probably a couple of people who have been holding on, wanting to get those PlayStation exclusive features. But besides that, I don't know how big of an impact it'll be. I'm excited for the success.
Yeah. And I think at the very least, giving more people a chance to play it is always going to be a good thing. And my history with Hellblade 2 was I tried it. It just was super not for me. And then everyone I talked to kind of felt the same way. So that could just be my orbit, but it definitely felt like a game that missed in terms of people like maybe getting excited about it, because it's like, oh, is this going to expand on the Hellblade idea? And then it didn't do that, and in some ways it felt more confined. But that was just my own personal critical response. All right, so let's get over here. Doom: The Dark Ages hit 3 million players right away, and the majority of them are on Game Pass, apparently. This is from Eddie McHugh at GameSpot. Bethesda has announced that Doom: The Dark Ages has become the developer id Software's biggest launch in the company's 34-year history, dating back to 1991. The game reached 3 million players and did so 7 times faster than Doom Eternal did. Bethesda did not share any sales numbers, however, nor do we know how much was spent on development, marketing, and other expenses. Also worth pointing out, Doom Eternal was not on Game Pass, so that's going to be obviously it's going to struggle to get to 3 million players in the same way that Doom: The Dark Ages did. But a lot of people playing this game, this felt like a game that was a poster child for Game Pass. A lot of these games are like, it's on Game Pass, and then it still sells very well because people are like, well, I just want to play it where I want to play it, or I want to own it. And Doom: The Dark Ages just felt like one where they were like out and loud, just get this on Game Pass. And it feels like that's what's happened here. Do you think there's any underlying, like, maybe this game actually isn't doing as well because it's just people are trying it on Game Pass and they're not buying it? Or is this just the way things are now?
I think it's a mix of both. Doom obviously is like a very historic franchise, but the first way we learned about this game's existence was just from the Activision Blizzard, or no, sorry, the Bethesda. No, it was the Activision Blizzard lawsuit, and they said something like Doom Year Zero coming out soon. So
Right.
there's been like for a lot of like big Doom fans like myself, like there is such a heavy association with that Game Pass, like knowing, oh, I'll have this great game. It's going to come out. It's going to rock expectations. It's definitely interesting. It's a very interesting follow up to Eternal. But I think Eternal might have turned people off in a couple different ways. Came out at like even at the like very beginning of the pandemic, I guess. So it didn't have that bump like we were talking about prior. But I honestly think that yeah, it's definitely having an impact. I think Microsoft knows that, but I think also they know that it's a game that kind of speaks for itself. It's been around so long that it's kind of doomed not to fail. Whoa, sorry for the pun. I didn't mean that. Sorry.
Yeah, it can help itself, but be not doomed, which is ironic for the game. People in chat pointing out it was like #1 on the sales chart on Steam, which is ranked by dollar sales. So like that's clearly a good sign. I think there were other people who were freaking out because the concurrent player numbers, which is a shady metric to begin with. I find it useful in some instances, but for a single player game, it's not what matters for sure. But hey, like some single player games come out, they get instantly to 100,000, and that's not what Doom did. So I don't know, read into that how you will. I think what's happening here is this game's doing just fine, and I think it's weighted towards Game Pass in a really heavy way. That is not a problem for the game, not a problem for Microsoft. It is part of the plan, and frankly, I think it's probably going to sell some Game Pass subscriptions, which is for as much as that's not their entire focus as it once was, it's still important to them. They still want to be growing all of their revenue streams. So yeah, it makes sense. Have you spent any time with Doom: The Dark Ages? Because I've been meaning to play it. I did a quick look with Dan and watched him play. It looks really good. I want to play more.
I definitely want to play more. That is probably the most experience I got watching your quick look to it. There's just been too many games coming out right now. I've been playing through both Blueprints. I've been playing through Expedition 33. I want to start Oblivion. I want to start so many games, and yet I keep coming back to like a Final Fantasy X. Expedition 33 kind of just put me in the mood for a good JRPG, but it's definitely a game I want to sink my teeth into when I have the time. It's there. I know people really like it. So have you gotten to the point where like the narrative really comes into play for Doom? I've heard some mixed things about that.
Not really, no. Yeah, like I said, I like have booted it up once and haven't really played much of it at all. So yeah, I think Dan got pretty deep into it, and Dan is pretty, allergic to that stuff, and he didn't have many terrible things to say about that. So I guess that gives me some hope for me personally, because at least in terms of story, I line up with Dan pretty close on that stuff. But I don't know, what have you heard? Like, are people just like it's too much story, too many cutscenes, or something like that?
Yeah, I've definitely heard things along the line that it is kind of a little intrusive, and those were
Hmm.
some of the elements from Eternal that I did have a little bit of a problem. Was kind of a pace killer. I thought
Right.
2016 did a great job of it, reintroducing us, kind of establishing this lore. But I mean, I don't really come to Doom for the huge lore. I do want to know more about what these Dark Ages and like how far in the past, like what is this going to impact the gameplay, but yeah, it is kind of just like a hindrance from the moment to moment gameplay I kind of come to Doom for.
Yeah, I definitely think they struck the exact right balance and the right tone with Doom 2016. That's the kind of narrative I want. Here's someone talking to you in an elevator, and Doom guy punches the screen. That's
Yeah.
perfect. Give me
Yes.
more of that. I don't think they did that. The Eternal definitely has a very different tone, and it sounds like this does as well. People in chat are saying that it takes itself too seriously, which is not what I want from Doom. I want it to know it's a metal album cover and play everything that way. All right, let's move on here. Anticipated game on Steam, Roadcraft, is out now and off to a good start. This is one of my pet games. I'm a huge Roadcraft fan already, been playing it, but huge fan of this series that it spawned from, Mud Runners and Snow Runners. This is from Blair Marnell at GameSpot. Crafting games like Minecraft aside, the vast majority of video games seem to embrace destruction over creation. Saber Interactive's new title, Roadcraft, takes a different approach. This game puts players in control of sites that have already been devastated by natural disasters and lets them choose how they want to rebuild the area around them. Roadcraft is now out on Steam and currently at number 35 on the platform's most played games, with just under 34,000 concurrent players. That's a very good start for a game considering the AAA titles it's competing with. Yeah, these games have an audience that like just show up for these games, and they get long-term support, 10 major updates, and people pay close attention to all of them, like, because it's like this is the game they're playing. Roadcraft really seems like it has the potential to be. I don't know how it'll play long term. I think it's going to be good long term, but at least in this moment, the first impression is very, very good. They've really kind of nailed it in terms of making the loop make sense. Of just make a road, destroy some stuff that's in the way, go get the materials to make a different road, build a bridge. And then use all these different cool vehicles to accomplish that. These vehicles and these big machines. It's very satisfying. So I'm happy to see that this game is doing well. It's also the kind of game that does end up in Game Pass eventually, which is when a lot of people finally try it. And I'm always happy for that. 'Cause then it's like easy to recommend. Because like John, I have no idea if you would like this game, and I probably wouldn't even recommend it. But it's like I'll talk about it, and if you get excited by what I'm saying, I'm like, well, then you should play it. And if not, it's like, well, one day when it's free to you, you should try it because I bet it could click still. But that's where I'm at with this. Are these kinds of games ever appealing to you?
I always like messing around with. It seems like it is kind of like a sandbox game.
Yeah.
Definitely seems like being able to create a play area, and the only limit is kind of your imagination. I'm definitely not the kind of person who would usually check this out, but I think there's a lot of like credit there. Like having Game Pass there to be able to try it
Right.
is a really good thing. And I think honestly, like this is kind of just like a microcosm of the bigger story that like Saber Interactive has really found multiple different niches that they're in. Like they're producing all
Yeah.
of these games that are hitting really hard for a lot of people. So it's just kind of admirable in a situation where a lot of games are just getting canned for not really understanding what their audience wants, and Saber kind of gives it to them.
Yeah. They it was the Saber that did Space Marine 2?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Warhammer games.
Right. And so like they're just like all over the place, like all these different genres. And yet I don't think they're like none of their games are like flat out bad. And many of them are like good to like very good. And I include Space Marine 2 in there and Mud Runners and Snow Runners and all that stuff. Snow Runners was my game of the year that year. I really liked that game. So
I remember.
yeah. So Saber has like found. You're right. Found it's not even a niche because it's in like several different niches, but it's definitely found a way to get games across the finish line. And they have a ton of projects. They're making that Jurassic Park game that Jeff Beckler thinks looks terrible, but the rest of us think looks pretty good. So I'm like, oh man, if they could pull off this stuff, I wonder what they're going to be able to do with that. So I'm at a point where anytime I hear Saber taking on a project, I get pretty excited. And you know, by all accounts, they are still working on that Knights of the Old Republic remake. For as much as Sony is not involved with that anymore, which is what I originally reported, they're still taking it on, and I'm kind of like more excited by that. It's like, man, this team just going after this or tackling this massive thing. What could it possibly look like? I don't know. I guess maybe we'll find out eventually. I
Hopefully.
think there's a chance we see that game here pretty soon. I hope so.
Really? Ooh, I'm in a
Yeah,
Star Wars mood right now. It's kind of
me
just
too.
like, yeah, there was definitely a decline, but recently in recent years, I mean, mostly driven by Andor.
Of course,
I've been watching this ILM documentary that they put on Disney,
it's really
which is
good.
really cool. I think there's a second season now, so I'm excited to get into that. But
That's the one
yeah,
that like talks about the early CGI. It's awesome.
it's fantastic. Seeing the Creature Lab, it is just fantastic. It is golden age movie making. It's great.
Yep. In a Star Wars mood as well because of Andor, and like I'm gonna go back to Outlaws for that DLC. And I what I
Yeah.
predicted is kind of happening. People are really coming around on Outlaws now. A big part of that is no one's trying to force themselves to play it anymore, so it's self-selecting a little bit. The people who are most likely to enjoy Star Wars Outlaws are the ones playing it at this point. That's why the conversation's changed a little bit. But I still think that there's an enthusiasm around that game that is well deserved because it's a better game than it got credit for. All right, last couple of stories here. New prestige physical game label editions, I think that's capital editions, that's what they're calling it, promises to reinvent what it means to collect games. This is from Chris Scullion at VGC. A new collector's label focused on physical editions of games has launched today. The label, which is simply called Editions, is the work of Lost in Cult and promises to reinvent what it means to collect games. Lost in Cult does like merchandise. I think they've done a lot of vinyl records for video game soundtracks and things like that. Now they're getting into this physical collector's edition space, and the packaging looks phenomenal. It looks
Yeah.
really good, John. I got the picture here. It has, it's not exactly Criterion Collection, but it feels like a video game Criterion Collection a little bit, with these slip cases that have a big, beautiful picture on it, and then you kind of take out the insert, and it's like a kind of this thick booklet that has a bold color on it with the name on the spine, and it's probably numbered. I don't know. It just looks fantastic, and that's for 3 games so far. And these things are going to be very limited. So if people think these things look good, maybe you should move on them here very soon. Immortality for the PS5, which is limited to 1,500 copies. The Excavation of Hobbs Barrow for Switch, which is limited to 3,000 copies. And thank goodness you're here for PS5 and Switch. PS5 version's 1,500 copies. The Switch version is 3,000 copies. So, yeah, again, I just think this looks fantastic. How are you, like you said, you don't collect a lot of physical for PS5 and Xbox. Do you collect for Switch? And are you someone who like goes the limited run games route, or one of these small shops that put out these very stellar collections?
Yeah, so when it comes to Switch, I just love a good cartridge. So a lot of my games on the original Switch have been physical for the most part. I really love collecting old games. I really love collecting like the Xbox PS2 generation, Super Nintendo, all kinds of stuff. This does kind of appeal to me. It's kind of scary how
Yeah.
much it appeals to me,
Hmm.
especially for something like Thank Goodness You're Here and Immortality, both fantastic games. I wish Immortality had a Switch kind of version. Maybe they're waiting
Yeah.
for Switch 2. There's some tricks there that maybe the Switch can't handle. But I think this is a net good. I do like limited run games. I know in recent like past couple of weeks there's been some kerfuffles. I know where there was one about the latest Shantae GBA release, and there's been some goings on that I think they're in a prime position addition to kind of make their mark, create this soup uber like bougie collectors like that. Those pictures are gorgeous.
Yeah. It really feels like I like the way video games look on a shelf, even if I'm not a collector myself. But I've heard the argument before and tend to agree with it that it's like video game shelves don't look as interesting or aesthetically pleasing as like a bookshelf with a bunch of books that have all different shapes and colors and sizes, and you could kind of organize it or whatever, kind of do a little visual flair to it to get the most out of that. And it's like, yeah, I get what you're saying there, and I do miss that if when I look at a video game shelf. This feels like it could introduce that idea, at least in terms of the variability of color and the materials and things like that. And then, or if you turn it the other way, where maybe the picture is facing out a little bit, it's like, well, then it really is going to shine, look very cool. So, for me, video games are experiences. They're things that I play. That's why I collect digitally. Not even collect. I get the games digitally because they're just experiences to me for the most part. And then the physical object is something else. And I've sort of decided not to care about that. But when I see something like this, like, man, maybe I should. That would be a fun thing to have.
Yeah, the Switch 2 generation is going to be kind of a little upsetting with the GameCube card nonsense, certain games having physicals. So I'm glad there are still people who are as passionate and who like creating this moment in time, this history that, people can collect, cherish, and pass on. I think that's a really cool call.
Yep, me too. And I'm glad there's like more companies getting into the space. It's definitely more than just limited run games already. There's, I think it's Serenity Forge out in Colorado. I've talked to them before. They have a similar business, and there's other shops as well. But it's like Lost and Cult has this cachet, I think, and they clearly know what they're doing. Again, the packaging looks nice, at least in pictures. We'll see how it is when it gets delivered. But it's nice to have some competition because it feels like this is going to be what's necessary for those people who want physical to continue. You're going to need a lot of these smaller shops all working in conjunction to sort of pick up, like, if limited run games lets something slip through the cracks, like on one of these other places can pick that up and still make a physical version, and the people who really care can show up and get those. Death Stranding 2 dev says PS4 to PS5 upgrade is not exciting, just more efficient. This is from Haley Williams at GameSpot. Really, the headline is that story, just saying that like he's the chief technical officer, and it's Akio Sakamoto over at Kojima Productions. And the developer said the difference between the PS4 and the PS5 isn't so great, but at least makes development more efficient. Do you think this is like a common sentiment among developers, and that's one of the reasons why this generation feels in many ways like it hasn't even really started, or has been a long continuation of the PS4 generation?
Yeah, it's very interesting because I feel like, yeah, like 2016 onward, I feel like we kind of hit a point where everything is kind of just already super gorgeous. Like if
Yep.
you looked at Uncharted 4 today, it's still a gorgeous looking game that people slaved away on. Um, and yeah, I think to an extent, it has been that weird situation of it paralleling kind of how like PC gaming has gone. There are multiple different SKUs, like no one can kind of figure out the baseline model to build a game around. I think these conversations happen all the time, whether it is to put games on PS4, PS5, or both. I know Capcom has put a lot of their games just on PS4. I think that's for an engine reason, but because it is accessible to everyone.
Yeah, and Sakamoto basically just he goes on to clarify a little bit, and he just says the most obvious improvement from a technological point of view is the reduction in loading times. But to be honest, the difference between the two hardware systems isn't so great. It's more a case that on PS5 there are more efficient ways of arriving to similar goals. So it's like I mean, this is the feeling I think we mostly have had that these games from PS4 to PS5 are very similar to some like at some point for some of these games so similar that they just put out a PS4 version and that's the PS5 version as well. They just like, well, yeah, we'll just put out a PS4 version. You'll just buy it on PS5. But it does feel like for the majority of games released, they are not trying a bunch of new ideas and new things and new visual tricks. For the most part, it is same games as we've been getting for the last like 10 years or so. So yeah. All right. Let's see. Your last story. Game Pass is adding Metaphor Refantasio, The Division 2, and more next week. This is from Andy Robinson at VGC. It's actually a pretty good Game Pass is expensive, but they have been, it's better than it's ever been in terms of the offering. I don't know if it's better than it's ever been in terms of the deal and feeling like you're getting a lot for your money, but there's a lot of games on there getting added and there have been since the beginning of this year. So Metaphor Refantasio will join Game Pass Ultimate, PC Game Pass, and Game Pass Standard for cloud, PC, and console. God, I'm not going to say that every time. That's coming May 29th, so next week. That's pretty good. Tales of Kinsera Zhao is joining tomorrow. Stalker 2 and Saga Hellblade 2 will join Game Pass Standard, which is like, remember they changed that so not every game launches in there right away. They get added later. Tom Clancy's The Division 2 will come to Game Pass Ultimate, PC Game Pass, blah, 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 on May 27th. And Monster Train 2, which I think is a new release, right? That's, the next big day one release. Yes. Monster Train 2 will hit Game Pass on May 29th, along with Spray Paint Simulator. So, not too bad. I did just get charged for Game Pass Ultimate again, and I'm like, I should cancel that. And then I see things like this. I'm like, God, this is pretty decent. Although, probably won't play most of those games on my Xbox. John, where are you at with Game Pass these days?
So yeah, so I do have Game Pass. I just built my first gaming PC for a long time. This is also the
Oh,
first generation I actually just bought a Series X for the first time. I got it into the pandemic. I had a lot of people who were on Game Pass who were playing, and I think there was some kind of like you kind of rent the Xbox for a while and then eventually you pay it off over time. Game Pass is a really good deal, to say that. And continuing our conversation from earlier, like games like Roadcraft are finding a new audience. I think Metaphor is going to be one that like finds a brand new audience, like people who have heard really good things, are looking forward to whatever Atlas is putting out next. I think it did a lot for Persona 3.
yeah,
And then, yeah, like kind of unsung hits. Like I really loved Tales of Kanzara Zao. I
me
think that
too.
is a really good game, and people should like take a look at that. Not to mention, like we're coming off of one of the most stacked Aprils I can remember, especially for Game Pass. And I mean, to your credit, I also just got charged Game Pass, and it's going to go for another month, and then we're going to see what Xbox actually has in store at their showcase. So
Good point.
they're hitting a really good cadence right now. I think it's a good deal. Maybe not as good of the best deal in gaming that I think a lot of people were touting at the time.
Yeah, years
As
ago.
we
Yeah.
have, it's been getting a lot more complicated with all those tiers. I still forget the names. There's like core, there's stand. I don't know, man.
And if you don't want to deal with the tiers, so you get the most expensive one. It's $20 a month, which that's a
Yeah.
big round number. So yeah, it's rough. I misspoke. Monster Train 2 is out today. People in chat are like playing it right
Oh,
now. So
great.
yeah, I was looking at the May 29th date was for Spray Paint Simulator. Monster Train 2 out now. I've not played Monster Train or what's the other one that everyone likes? Slay the Spire. I think that's a similar
Oh,
game. I've not played
yeah.
any of these. I'm wondering if I should just jump in with Monster Train 2 or go back to Slay the Spire. Feel free to let me know in chat. Uh, all right. That does it for the headlines. We have a poll question we need to get to. Let me pull that up right now as Jan gets it up for you all as well. You can go to youtube.com/@giantbomb, hit the community tab there, find the poll questions to vote yourself. Let's see here from earlier this week on Monday. Do you think a game can be worth $80? Yes or no? We're gonna have a similar question today about Borderlands specifically. I have to vote to see the results here. I'm gonna say, well, I didn't know. I haven't spent $80 on a game yet. I did the thing you did. I got Mario Kart World for $50. So I'm going to say no until I am forced to say yes. And
Yeah.
I'm in the minority here. 30% say no. 70% say yes. They think a game could be worth $80. Okay. Yeah. Hey, that's why it's $80, everybody. Like, if you 70% of people think a game can be worth that. I mean, the problem is just people are thinking just being truthful, right? Like, yeah, I can imagine a game being worth $80. Now, to be fair, I think in the past, John, I did say that if Tears of the Kingdom was coming out and they wanted to charge me $150, I would have easily just done that without thinking. So clearly, I also agree. But there we go. We got a new poll question here in a second. We'll get to that in a moment. Before we do that, though, Jon Martin, why don't you tell people where they can find you on the internet, what you have going on, and all of that good stuff?
Thank you so much. Yeah, so you can find me at Jon Martin at bluesky.com or whatever the X's thing. I'm about to be traveling. I'm also moving right now, so it's been kind of crazy. I do stream on Twitch. I do write video essays. I'm looking forward to putting that out. I'm definitely going to be streaming the week of the Switch too. So you can check me out at High Score on YouTube, and you can also find me as Score or JMan065 in the Giant Bomb chat. I'd love to talk to people, and I am excited for Rascal later today.
Yeah, Rascal coming up. Let's do this poll question. We'll talk about what else we have happening. So, new poll question: will you get Borderlands 4 at launch if it's $80? So many of you say a game can be worth $80. Is Borderlands 4 going to be worth $80 to you? We don't know if that's the price. That's why I said if. But yes or no are your options. We'll get the results and talk about that on Game Mess Mornings here on Giant Bomb tomorrow. Speaking of Giant Bomb, as John said, Rascal, Blight Club returns. Mike is going to keep looking so cool, everybody. You're just not going to want to miss it. He also, this game's getting to him. This game is like, this game's really, he was telling me last night, he's like, man, it's like a burden hanging over me that I got to go back and play that game. So I still think he's going to probably like finish that game in just a couple more episodes because he's still good at these games, even though he's hating it. But at the very least, he's going to be miserable. So, and then after that, it's Dan's turn. So I'm on cloud nine over here. This is the best. Okay, let's see what else do we have happening. There should be a premiere happening on YouTube for the latest demo derby. We recorded that yesterday. OPM issue number 55. Look out for that. There's some really good bangers on that disc. So check that out. We had a really good time recording that. And then voicemail dump truck tomorrow. We'll have some more quick looks happening. We'll have UPF on Friday. We're going to be mosquitoes. Apparently, it's a Mosquito meets Evolve, or Mr. Mosquito meets Evolve. Apparently, is how this game works. So looking forward to playing that. Plenty more happening on Giant Bomb. If you want to support us, go to giantbomb.com/join. In the meantime, we'll be back with Game Mess Mornings tomorrow. Jon Martin, thank you so much for hanging out with me today and talking about video games, man. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for happening, man. This is the greatest. Giant Bomb is the greatest community on Earth, and yeah, I'm just happy to be a part of it.
Thanks. I was really glad we could meet each other at PAX. I'm glad we could make this happen. We'll make it happen again. In the meantime, thank you everybody for watching and listening. As John said, you're the best audience in gaming. Until next time, have a good one. Take care of yourself, and goodbye.